Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for another episode of Restore the Floor, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm Stoney. He is Evan Jenkins. What's up, Ev?
Just living the dream here in Detroit, and God, just get me to the playoffs, Stoney, so I don't have to. Actually, when I do overreact, it will be for a reason.
Yes, exactly. It was weird. Since the last time we recorded, they've had 3 games, 2 of them with Cleveland, and you can take away whatever you want from them. But let's be honest, until last night, the Pistons played without Isaiah Stewart. However, Cleveland Friday night, no Harden, no Donovan Mitchell. Orlando, they're missing, Franz Wagner for the rest of the season, it appears. And on Monday night, or Tuesday night, I should say, they did not play with Donovan Mitchell. James Harden did play. So they go 2-1, which, you look at it, Cleveland's really good anyway. So record-wise, it's okay. There seem to be some real strange anomalies in these games. For instance, 3-point shooting. In Friday night's amazing overtime victory, they shot 22% from 3. In Sunday's 14-point victory, they shot 13% from 3, 4 from 30. So it looks like, the 3, as we've been saying all along, that's going to be the bugaboo for this team. Last night, they actually shot 38% in the game on Tuesday, 9 for 24, 38%, which is they'll take that every game, and they lose. It's like, okay, figure that one out for me.
Well, I think with the Cavs, it's pretty evident that their trades definitely made their team better. There's one guy in Keon Ellis that you absolutely loved. You wanted the Pistons to go get, and boy, is he a defensive stud. You got Dennis Schroeder, who's out there literally just trolling Cade through the game. I don't know if you saw the clip that's on social media where he's like, what, you can't call me back now that you're getting MVP chance and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what bothered me the most out of all 3 of those games. I think the win on Friday was great. They had to come back. They had to get that win. You just had to do it. And then
it was a ridiculous play by Cleveland. I mean, how do you foul Danis in that situation?
Shooting a 3 at half court. Like, I know what they were trying to follow him before, so he couldn't even take that 3. Regardless, you can't be in that position. The Magic game was great because they did pull away in the fourth quarter. But it's what J.B. Bickerstaff said after the game on Tuesday night against the Cavs, where he said, and this is paraphrasing, that the team's superpower is trying hard, and when they're not trying hard, they can't be there. And I hate to say it, but if your best attribute as a team is trying hard, that's not going to be good enough in the playoffs.
Correct, because everybody plays hard in the playoffs. Now,
and that's the difference. But we've talked about that all year long, about how the Pistons are just out trying every last team out there, and it's just – that's not something – I mean, it's something that you can hang your hat on, that you got 12 NBA players to try hard for 82 games.
Yeah.
But come the playoffs, it's a different beast, and I think they're starting to see that now with some of these better teams, especially after Cleveland talked their shit last Friday that they could beat them in a 7-game series, and the Pistons come out flat like that. It was a little disheartening.
Yeah, and it's such a weird – it's more than box scores, but last Friday night, they win in overtime, and – Tobias, 5 for 13, 11 points. Okay, big deal. Then Sunday against Orlando, he's 10 for 18 with 23 points. And then Tuesday, he doesn't score in the first half, and then he keeps him in the game with a 19-point performance in the second half.
Yeah, but 17 of those came in the third. So come fourth and crunch time, where are you?
I know.
Cade's performance bothered me a little bit.
He had a horrible game. There's no doubt about it.
You just got to take more than one shot in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry. You have to. You got it. I'll always go back to Kobe talking about, would you rather me shoot or Madsen shoot? You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to it, I'd rather the ball be in your hands than Karis LeVert.
Yeah, and then there was one where what was it? Asar with a 3 from the corner. I was like, well, really? What were you doing?
That's the position this team's in, though, without getting 3-point shooting. I mean, obviously, Herter can't play on the defensive end, and that's why he can't see minutes, I guess. I don't know. That's an enigma to me.
But Duncan Robinson is certainly – he's not a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year.
That's true, and maybe he knows the system more. But it just seems odd right now. Now, they have another big test coming up against San Antonio on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very intrigued to see how they respond after the last game they played them at home. And now the Spurs got blown out by the Knicks, and then they've rebounded. But it's everything that we feared in 15 losses. I mean, let's be honest. They've 30 games over 500. That's pretty damn good.
Right. The lead is, 4.5 right now.
Yep.
20 games left.
It looks like Tatum's coming back. It could be as soon as Friday, which is astounding.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is there's no team in the East, in the top 4 that they can't beat and they can't lose to. They could lose to any of those too. I mean, Boston, I think, is the best team. But if you get a James Harden, who for some reason is completely locked in the playoffs, that's going to be a very tough out, because what Harden has been doing is making some of their bigs a lot better too.
Oh, absolutely, because he draws so much damn attention. And just think, he's not going to have to be the main guy when Donovan Mitchell comes back.
Right.
And I think this late in his career, he's actually going to embrace, hey, I don't have to take all the biggest shots on this team. I can let others do it. And you're right about how much they've opened up Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and what they're able to do around the basket. That's a big thing. And I want to know your opinion of the rotation now that Beef Stew is back. It looks like Paul Reed is out and he's not going to get those minutes.
Pretty much. But where are those minutes going to go, though? I mean, so if you'd rather have Beef Stew than Paul Reed.
I agree with that completely. Now, I understand that's his first game back after 7 games missed, but he just didn't seem to be playing like himself. Like, he didn't really have an impact at all Tuesday night, in my opinion.
No. So it was his first game back. So.
Right. So you got to work yourself back. And I guess my understanding is they're not allowed to practice with the team. They can do shoot arounds and so on, because that's not an official capacity. So I guess I could be taking shots and warm-ups for all of them.
Hey, let me tell you something. So most of these games you can do better from 3 than they've done.
I just don't understand it. But if you watch these games, it's how many threes that Ron Holland's taking in. Asur doesn't take as many,
right?
But even last night, if you noticed, it wasn't Cade bringing the ball up that much. It was a lot of Asur. I mean, you saw Duren bringing the ball up. And I understand that's neither here nor there in the longevity of the game, because it's how you get into your set and eventually who gets the ball. But teams are going to play Cade a lot tougher going forward. And it seems like he's getting a little frustrated out there, which is disappointing to see. But that's on Trajan and that's on coaching to make those necessary changes, right?
Yeah, and, somebody who has been hitting a decent amount of threes, but he's so inconsistent like the rest of them, is Javonte Green.
Yeah, he played pretty well Tuesday night, at least in the box score. But you're right. But he's a role player, and it goes back to, us talking to Stan Van Gundy last week and him talking about the second option for them to literally create their own shot is going to be Tobias and then Karras. And Javonte is a great role player, but he's not taking that shot to make on his own. He has to be open, and his defender has to leave to go get Cade. But if they're not even allowing Cade to get to the rim, it's interesting. But I don't know if I brought this up last week, Stoney, and I'll be interested to hear your take. You've been around basketball for a very, very long time. I've watched a lot of basketball in my lifetime. But the more players complain, the more coaches complain, and it seems like it's after every single foul call. I hate to say it, but there's going to be bias against you. It just appears that way to me. You don't have to complain about every single call in the basketball game, and I feel like that's costing them a little bit.
A little bit, especially, JB is known to bitch a little bit. Now, I understand some of it. I mean, like last night, granted, he had a poor shooting game in Cade. He was 4 for 16, 14 assists. But you tell me that he didn't deserve to go to the line more than twice last night?
I definitely think he did, but the moment he goes up and misses a shot, he's instantly complaining to the ref, and that comes from coaching. And listen, he maybe he's in the right. You don't always get the best angles from an NBA broadcast to be able to see those types of things, but he did step up in other parts. I mean, that block that he had on Harden in the fourth quarter was awesome.
Was huge. There's no doubt about it.
But then you're down 2, and he has 2 consecutive turnovers. So it's like you take the good and the bad, and that's not the Cade that we've seen. I mean, he was just named Eastern Conference Player of the Month. So
that's right. Yes.
You're allowed to have a bad game.
Absolutely.
I was so triggered yesterday, Stoney, on social media. One of these Pistons fans put out there Jordan's 98 stats compared to Cade's stats this year and saying how Cade's such a better player. And I'm
come on. No, don't tell me this, Tevin.
Yes.
I have more faith in Detroit humanity.
That was real. And I'm like, well, go look at how many dudes score 20 points a game in the NBA today compared to 1998.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even comparable. But, hey, to each his own, I understand it. But the Pistons have a tough road, and it's good that you face this adversity in the season and you don't have to wait. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I've always felt the best teams need to get punched in the mouth to see what it feels like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you respond from that? And that's what we're about to see with this team.
Yeah. Look, we all love Dennis Jenkins. But, I mean, his last 2 games were not real good, or the first 2 of the 3. I mean, Friday night, he shoots 2 for 10. I mean, granted, he made the play to get, but he made the free throws, which is pretty damn impressive. Then against the Orlando Magic, Danis goes, 1 for 6, 0 for 2 for 3, and in Cleveland, in the game that they lost, he was 2 for 4 and 1 for 1 from 3. But you can't.
What are his minutes in those games, Sony?
Okay, so Tuesday night, 11 minutes. Sunday, it was 11 minutes. The overtime game, 19 minutes. So
well, that's because Cade fouled out, too.
Correct. He's not getting huge minutes, but if he's your second guard right now, right? I mean, I don't know. Harris LeVert, technically is, right?
Well, I guess it would be Duncan, right?
Yeah.
But that's the problem. They have a bunch of forwards on this team and not a bunch of guards.
Right.
And Marcus Sasser can't see his way off the bench, so obviously he has to be a defensive liability or something that he can't get run. Herder, I'll never understand it, but yet I do understand it because of what Jaden Ivey has done since being traded and the words that have come out of his mouth and the lack thereof performances with the Bulls. But just seems like a weird fit at this point in time with this basketball team. And yet again, we're nitpicking on a team that's 4.5 games up in the East, which is a great thing in my opinion.
I know.
That you can have concerns, but yet they're still doing this great.
Right. So and I hate using the expression, but if the season ended today and chalk, played out, which I don't think it will, because I think Charlotte's going to get into the top 8 or whatever. But if the season ended today, Detroit would play Miami, Boston, Orlando, the Knicks would play Philly, and Cleveland would play Toronto. And the team that worries me early, especially if they get to the 8, is Charlotte. They're like a machine right now.
Yeah, especially with their recent history with the team. How much is that going to affect play? How much is that going to get into players' heads? You know what I mean? And Charlotte's a weird team, too, because they're really a bunch of misfits that are on that team, if you think about it, with LaMelo Ball, who a lot of people don't really respect his game, but he's out there performing. You got Miles Bridges. We know his history off the court here in Detroit locally. Diabate, we thought he was a failed product in the NBA.
I know.
He's out there putting up great minutes for him.
And Brandon Miller's playing terrific. And, of course,
who's a high draft pick that he was a high volume scorer at Alabama, and he's come out and done that in the NBA as well.
Right. I think that was the year Pistons took Ivy, right? I believe that's the year.
Yeah, he was in the Wemby year. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it was Wemby, what was it? Jabari Smith went to Houston, and then, No,
Jabari Smith, I thought he was with Paulo. Remember, they kept debating on who was going to get drafted first.
Well, then maybe he was with the Apollo. Anyway, regardless, he's doing great. And, the kid from Duke, Kneppel, he might be rookie of the year at a flag.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, too, because he's set he's very close to setting the NBA rookie record for threes in a season, but the dude can just flat out score. And you go look at that Duke team, and you're like, were you using him good enough last year in the tournament and everything?
Oh, I know.
I look at this team. There's a lot of promising things, but there's a lot of glaring needs that right now in the NBA season, you're not exactly going to go find on the street, and that's a big question.
All right, we're joined on Restore the Floor by a guy that I first met in the glory days of the early 2000s. He was in Florida covering the dastardly Miami Heat, and the Pistons and Heat had two really good series. It was a bitter rivalry. It was great. And George Sedano, who you now see doing sidelines on the big stage for ESPN ABC, he's made it to the big time. How you doing, George?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Those were some fun days at the Palace of Auburn Hills with those Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups teams against Dwayne Wade and Shaq. Those were 2 fun years for sure.
Oh, yes. And then the Pistons won the title one year. Then they beat the Heat to get to the finals the following year. And then the Heat got revenge in 2006. They go win the title. What do you remember the most about those games and that building? Because it was crazy.
Oh, man, the building was insane. I can't even repeat the stuff that was said at Pat Riley during that time. I mean, it was some of the nastiest, most vile stuff I've heard. And look, that's what it was. You knew when you were going into the Palace of Auburn Hills that it was going to be a rough night for you, not just because the team was good, because the fans were going to give it to you. And look, those were some great battles. I feel like those Pistons teams, now we see them differently, right? Because of, 6 straight conference finals appearances, yes. And then, the couple of NBA finals appearances, beating the Lakers. I feel like in real time, we didn't give them their proper due. But I think as time has gone by, we've now realized how good a team that was, particularly just the starting 5 particularly, but just in general, right? There were a couple of nice role players in there that played significant roles, and they always battled. It felt like the team with the stars, right? Where there was the Lakers in that finals, right? Or even the Spurs, although they don't like to consider themselves a star-laden team. I mean, Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players in NBA history, right? Manu Ginobili is the greatest sixth man maybe in NBA history. Tony Parker was an all-world player, right? Like they had all these guys at that particular time that were so good. So, and then obviously Shaq and Wade, as I mentioned a moment ago. So they always faced these star-laden teams and really not only held their own, but, took care of business more times than not.
Yep. And we referenced how great the Palace was. And then we went through, about 15, 16 years of the Pistons really being irrelevant. They moved into a new building. It's kind of a morgue unless somebody like LeBron would show up. And you were there Friday night, and I think it was your first regular season game. You told me you were at a preseason game. The difference in the ambiance in that building now is incredible, isn't it?
Oh, no doubt. And actually, I didn't think of this when I saw you the other day. I actually did one of the, I guess maybe the first playoff game there when they played Milwaukee when Blake Griffin was on.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I did do that, but that team we knew wasn't really going anywhere. But but to your point, the horn incident or horn bonanza aside, the place was rocking, man. And look, maybe it isn't exactly like the Palace of Auburn Hills, but it was pretty darn close at times, right? Like, I feel like this team is so good that the city seems to be getting behind it. The fans are getting behind it. This, to me, and I told you this when I saw you, Stoney, which this is one of these franchises that it's great for the NBA when the Pistons are good. And I feel like we're at that point. They're the best team in the league by record. We're going to wonder to see now if they can actually fulfill that prophecy now in the postseason. But this team is legit. This team is here to stay. And this team is going to be a real problem, not just this season, but for a number of years to come.
Now, you had mentioned when you were covering the Heat what people were saying to Pat Riley, but now that you're on the sidelines of all these NBA games for ESPN, do you hear any coach go at the ref as much as JB does on a game in and game out basis?
Well, it's pretty hilarious because that game that I did on Friday night between the Cavs and the Pistons, he had lost his voice from the game before. So he could barely speak to us in the pregame meeting that we have with the coaches. I can't even imagine what the officials were trying to decipher from him. They probably were thinking to themselves, you know what? I don't know why he keeps screaming because we can't understand a word he's saying because we can't hear him. And so, but to his credit, old habits die hard. He was giving it to him still, no matter not having a voice. But yeah, look, man, that's part of the deal. It's funny because I run into the officials a lot. We tend to find them on the road, whether it's at a restaurant or maybe even at the same hotel sometimes. And they get it, man. They get that they have a tough gig, right? And I think basketball or NBA basketball particularly, is the most difficult of sports to officiate because you're talking about guys zooming up the court 94 feet in every different direction. Guys are bigger, stronger, faster now. They're also more crafty than they've ever been on kind of bending the rules as much as possible. So Monty McCutcheon, who leads the officiating group now, who was obviously a longtime former referee himself in the NBA, man, those guys have a tough job to try to figure out how guys are always trying to get around and skirt around the rules, let alone the physicality, the athleticism that they have to see. You blink an eye, man, and you can miss something pretty easily in the NBA. So I feel bad for those guys having to deal with it, but I get it. Like if you're a coach, you're fighting for every inch, especially in a game or when you're in a situation like Detroit was the other night, where they're facing an undermanned Cleveland team, and Cleveland was getting the best of them at that particular point.
When you're on the sidelines, is there, I don't know if you can say one, we all remember what Popovich was like to the sideline reporters. Is there one coach who just doesn't want to do it, but the league mandate is, and because it's tough for you because a lot of times they really don't say anything.
Well, I'll tell you this. We don't really do coaches very much anymore, if at all. We do players now in the quarter interviews, and I think better. Yes, I would say this, though. I found myself really enjoying some of these guys. I think the younger coaches, or the newer, not all younger necessarily, but the newer coaches were better at it than maybe the older guys, right? When I first started doing this 10 years ago, these guys definitely didn't want to do it. Although one of my most viral moments on the sideline was with Pop. Because I mean, you could probably find it on social media somewhere. But long story short, we were there. It was when Kawhi was traded to Toronto. So they got DeMar DeRozan, and this was DeMar DeRozan's return game to Toronto with the Spurs. And I asked him about DeMar's return. He gave me like a 2-word answer, like Pop would. You gotta ask him a who, what, when, where, why. Because, I mean, you should do that anyway, but that way you at least try to get an answer out of him.
Right.
And then he gave me like, yeah, he's doing well. Like I asked him, how's DeMar doing on his in his first game back here? Yeah, he's doing well. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? How about I come out ahead on this one? And we just ended on the first question because you had to do two. And he looks at me and he kind of smiles and he goes, I was really looking forward to a second question. And we had like a fun little back and forth. I was barely prepared to ask him a second question because I thought he would just laugh and walk away. But some of these guys were really good at it. Like, so I did the game the other night with Michael Malone, and that was his first game for ESPN in the broadcast booth. And he was always really good to talk to because, man, Michael, he didn't mince words. Like, if he had an issue with the way his team was playing, he was going to give it to you, and he was going to tell us the truth. And whether it was an individual player or the collective, he was really good at it. Steve Kerr was fantastic at it. Again, Steve was a broadcaster too, so I think that plays a role in it. But I would say, Mark Dagnall for the Thunder was always pretty good at it. Stan Van Gundy, when I used to talk to Stan, was good at it. They were guys more guys were better at it than you'd think. It's just the initial versions of it. These guys hated every second of it, but guys eventually got used to it. But the player stuff is interesting too, because some of those guys, I'll give you an example. Like if you get a guy who's a role player who in the first quarter goes off for like 12 or 15 points and you're talking to him, he's not used to being in those situations.
Right.
So he maybe just clam up on you a little bit in those scenarios. So you may not get as good an interview as you would if it was one of the contributors or the regular contributors on a team. So it can be a little hit or miss too with the players sometimes.
Is the West that much better than the East right now? Because I look at the the four in the East, and any of them is good enough to get to the finals. Do they have enough to beat whether it's OKC, Denver, or even now San Antonio? I'm not sure.
Right, but that's where it ends. It ends at 4, is what I would say. So you're looking at Detroit, Cleveland, Boston, and New York. And then beyond that, I don't really think there's anybody else. Whereas in the West, clearly Oklahoma City and San Antonio are in a different class at the moment, it feels like. And I could say that even about Oklahoma City, and this is something I'm going to talk about tonight on the broadcast with Mike Breen and Tim Legler, that the Shea injury was almost a blessing in disguise for them in some ways, because he missed those games, and Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, the wing player, has also missed a ton of games too.
The better Jalen Williams.
Yeah, but the other Jalen Williams from Arkansas, the big man, he balled out yesterday against Chicago.
He balled out here last week. He had
correct. And he did a game. I did a game against San Antonio against Wemby, and those guys where he balled out there too. He had like 15 and like 13 in that game too. So with like 5 assists. So they've really redefined what depth is because of their injuries. And it just really is a testament to what Sam Presti has been able to do there, that they can plug in these guys who barely play or in the G League or two-way or whatever, and they can get real results out of these guys. And you guys know this, man. Come playoff time, there's always one game where some random role player goes off and helps you win a game, which could help you win a series. So I just think for them, I look at it that way and say to myself, yeah, like they're so deep. San Antonio is ahead of schedule, but they're really good. Denver has Jokic, and I know he's been a little different since coming off the injury. He's turned the ball over more, but he's still freaking Jokic, right? And their thing is health too, right? Is Aaron Gordon going to be healthy, et cetera? So I would put those two in one category, Denver kind of in a category of their own. But then after that, you got Minnesota, who's been to back-to-back conference finals. I still think the Lakers, who haven't had their full complement of players, but outside of 2 games this season, and I mean the entire rotation, right? They've only had, I think, LeBron, Reeves, and Luka have only played roughly about 300 minutes together this season.
Wow.
So they barely played together. So they could find, lightning in a bottle. Houston with Durant, if they get Van Vliet back, what does that look like? There's just more teams in the West that I think you can count on than there are in the East. But I do think we slept on the East. I think that as a collective, and I started saying this probably about a month and a half into the season, that everyone who thought the East was going to be a joke was completely wrong. This is a good conference, and particularly at the top, it's as good as, I would say the majority of the upper half of the Western Conference.
You just mentioned about how the playoffs are different than the regular season. And I think a lot of fans here in Detroit, it's been such a long time other than last year against the Knicks, to realize that intensity is there from start to end where it might not be in the regular season. From your point of view, what do you see on the sidelines in the playoffs compared to the regular season when it comes to that?
Well, I think just let's start from a coaching perspective, right? The game planning is different. You have time in between. You're only focusing on one opponent. You will practice. You will walk through. You will specifically game plan for stuff down to the T, right? I will never forget when Miami and Boston were playing recently, right? When Jimmy Butler was there, and they had I think they played 3 or 4 times in that stretch. I remember talking to Andre Iguodala on Miami when he was on Miami after his stint in Golden State, and he talked about working with Spoelstra. And look, obviously he had won championships with Steve Kerr, right? But he said, as great as Steve was, Spo, they're both great in different ways, but Spo's attention to detail is unlike anything I'd ever seen. He would tell us, hey, Jason Tatum, when he takes this, when he shuffles his feet to his left, he's going to do X. If he moves the right foot, with a jab step and brings it back and then pump fakes, he's going to do this, right? There was so much detail involved with understanding what guys were going to do from just move to move, okay, let alone possession to possession. And maybe not everybody's Eric Spoelstra in that sense, but I would say there's a lot of really good coaches in the NBA. And a lot of coaches have followed that path because a lot of coaches like Spoelstra have come up through the video room in some way, shape, or form and have been assistants like him for a long time and had to scout and early scout and game plan. So we've got a lot of Spoelstras now, right, in the NBA. So I think it starts there, the attention to detail. And then clearly the intensity level is different. In the regular season, you may get guys diving on the floor occasionally for a ball or whatever. The role players will always do it. But in the postseason, the stars are literally jockeying for every inch on the floor, right? There is no possession that is meaningless in a game. And especially now, I know people lament the three-point shot in a lot of ways, but with the three-point shot being as in vogue as it is, I mean, a 20-point lead is not insurmountable anymore, as we've seen in the regular season. It's certainly not even in the playoffs. So I just think that the game planning is different. The intensity level is different. The attention to detail is different. And that goes across the board from coaching staff to player. And it's why I do think the experience the Pistons got last year was helpful. I personally thought they got hosed on that play. We all know the shot in the corner. That could have changed the trajectory of that entire series. I think they've taken that to heart, which is why they've, taken it out on the Knicks this season during the regular season. I think that little experience could be helpful for them. And they have guys on the roster who've been deep in the playoffs. A guy like Duncan Robinson, who's a key factor in spacing the floor for them, has been to the NBA Finals twice. He's had a lot of deep playoff runs. I think that there's just a lot of guys that they can lean on now with at least some modicum of experience in the playoffs. And getting that taste, I think, is a big deal.
You mentioned the three-point shot. So you're doing the game with legs tonight or on Wednesday. Does he have anything left? Because that's the one thing here in Detroit we don't have. You mentioned Duncan, but other than that, who's going to hit threes and space out the floor? We were very disappointed they didn't do more at the deadline. And, Kevin Huerter he can't even make the rotation at all.
Yeah, I don't know if Legs has got any legs left these days in his 50s, almost 60 years old. But the Huerter thing, I get it in theory, right? Because if you look at him historically, he's been a good shooter, right? And he's more than just a shooter. He's got more to his game than just shooting. He's a good passer. He can get to the rim. In theory, he's a three-level scorer. He's not a star-level three-level scorer, but he can perform at all three levels. Just the shooting has been weird this year for him. It's not the norm. And look, Duncan has a little bit of that to him, but I think Huerter at his best is a little better than Duncan offensively in the sense because I just think he's more of a force going downhill than Duncan is, although Duncan has done a better job even prior to this season. He started doing a little bit of that the last couple years in Miami. And but yeah, if the Huerter addition, if he just could shoot the ball well, then you'd have a chance. I think what I would do if I were JB in any of these blowout situations, I'd just give him a little run and just see, right? See if he can shoot himself out of it a little bit and give him some opportunity because, the playoffs are starting in 20 games or so or whatever it is. You got to be ready. And you just never know. And by the way, even in the playoffs, I would consider if you're in a blowout situation, throw him out there. See if he can get out of it there too. I just think that if you're the Pistons, you're expecting a deep playoff run, and you never know when a guy can help you. So I would imagine JB in those scenarios, we'll see what he's got out there and see if he can help. But right at the moment, I don't think that, to your point, I don't think he's cracking the rotation without it being one of those blowout scenarios.
Final thing, I see I looked at you up that you graduated from FIU. Were you there for the great Isaiah Thomas days when he was the head coach?
I was long gone. Yeah, I was gone. I was actually in school at the exact same time as Raja Bell and Carlos Arroyo. Guys.
Former Piston great.
Yeah, and those guys were in school when I was there, and they made the NCAA tournament. They got whacked by UCLA in the tournament. That was a UCLA team that won. That was the Tyus Edney team. I was a freshman in college at that point. Those guys were older than me. But yeah, that was when I was there. I was there with two NBA players. Who would have thought little old FIU would have two NBA players on their roster and guys who played nearly a decade, basically.
Was Cristobal the football coach there for a little bit?
He was. So I did their games. I was not a student at that point. I called their games while he was the head coach. That's where he and I really developed a real relationship. And because I was with him for a couple of years, 2 years, and he got fired after the third year, so I wasn't there anymore. I was doing what was I doing at that time? I don't remember. You know what? I was covering basketball more because I would do college football like I do now, right? But that was a local thing. I left ESPN. That's what happened. That's why I wasn't there anymore. So that was 12 years ago when he got fired. But so he and I developed a relationship. We always kept in touch. when he went to Alabama, when he was at Oregon. I did a few of his games on ESPN radio because when I first started doing play-by-play, I started on ESPN radio, and I would do the Pac-12 games. We had a deal with the Pac-12 at the time. Rest in peace, the Pac-12. I can get into an hours-long conversation of how the Pac-12 completely screwed up college football or college athletics in general. But that's another story for another day. That way, that's the reason you guys have USC and UCLA in the Big Ten now.
I know, we hate it.
Yeah, and they don't love it either. I mean, they love the money, but that's it. Nobody actually loves it. But yeah, so I had a long-standing relationship with him. So when he became the head coach at Miami, I connected with him and I said, hey, could I do a profile on you on your first year? So we did a feature that ran on game day before the season, when the season started for week 1 that year. And I'm super proud of him, man. Local guy like me, grew up in Miami, Cuban kid, took a lot of grief over the years for certain things, but really has the program, literally, a play or two away from winning the national championship. So it is kind of cool to see. So I was there at every game, basically, in one way, shape, or form, whether I was working or just happened to be in the area for an NBA game and made a quick trip to go watch them play. So it was fun for sure.
It was great catching up with you on Friday. I love, DFN Pash worked with us, and he's a star, and you're doing great things. And appreciate. I remember, Levitard would come on the shows, and we'd have the bitching about Miami's a better city than Detroit and all that stuff. But which really, I mean, for somebody who has a winter place in Boca, kind of, it's you
can say it. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay. I'm okay.
And I hit the upgrade button from Miami to LA because there's not even humidity in LA. I get 75 degrees every day with palm trees and sunshine. I don't have to deal with the rain and the humidity anymore. I go back to Miami and I'm sweating 10 minutes into getting there. I'm like, how could I have lived here for 30 years? It's crazy.
George, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you at LCA during the playoffs. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon. Thanks again, Stoney.